India's stance on Russia-Ukraine war so far has been disappointing, to say the least. I am aware that the Indian media, particularly television, is beating the drums about how India has taken a very prudent position by neither criticizing Russia nor joining the Western Bloc in the United Nations and elsewhere. In fact, India has abstained twice on the vote condemning Russian aggression of Ukraine and once in the company of China. Both China and India have abstained. This is perhaps in keeping with the historic strategy of non-alignment, neutrality, middle of the road, so-called balancing role that India has been following since the Cold War began. This was by our first Prime Minister Pandit Nehru. He wanted to play a role in the world stage from the developing world through non-alignment. This was untenable from the word go. Nehru could not maintain it. In 1956, a stark example of Nehru's inability to remain non-aligned is as follows. In 1956, there is an attack on Suez Canal by Anglo-French army. Nehru was critical of it. In the same year, Soviet Union invaded Hungary and strangely Nehru kept quiet. And the explanation then was India was dependent on the Russian veto on Kashmir in the United Nations Security Council. But let us remember that it is Pandit Nehru who took this inexplicable, incredible step of taking the Kashmir dispute into United Nations. When Indian army was advancing, beating back the tribal insurgents backed by Pakistan army, Nehru suddenly asked them to halt and POK was created. Nehru said, I take it to United Nations. But interesting thing to note here is that the current regime led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi is super critical of Nehru's foreign policy. But they are following the same policy of non-alignment, what is euphemistically called by experts continuity and change. Prime Minister Modi is continuing with the policy of non-alignment. In fact, once he addressed the non-aligned summit digitally. I think I wrote an article saying, don't flog a dead horse. There is no departure, there is no change in our policy towards China and Russia. India's credibility as an independent, democratic, sovereign, value-based, rule-based country has diminished. And so has diminished any chance, to be precise, our Prime Minister's ambition of becoming a Vishwa Guru. Because if we cannot tackle a crisis, we cannot take a principled position on an international crisis like this, very few countries will follow us. What could India do in the present situation? Agree that India cannot outrightly oppose Russia. India's position has become further difficult with the weak-kneed response from the Western countries to the invasion of Ukraine. Sanctions will not bite. There should have been a bigger response, or they should not have provoked the aggression without securing the safety of Ukrainians. India could do two things. It is true that India cannot take this position against Soviet Union now, but it should have seen it coming, and some of us have been arguing that India should choose its corner between the democratic world and the autocratic world. If India had done so, then its reliance on now Russian armed supplies would not have been necessary if India had done business with countries like Japan and Korea, made friends and partnership with them. India would not have relied, even today, on China for supply of raw materials when China occupies 50,000 square kilometers of our land. So, two things that I was referring to. One, India should either persuade Putin to pull back, convince Putin that annexing Ukraine or proxy ruling Ukraine today is not an option, failing which India should distinguish between Putin and Russia. Putin is a perishable phenomena. All leaders will go one day. But Russians who are opposing Putin, even opposing the war, there should be alternative channels to build bridges with them. And another credible idea, a fair compromise, India could propose to both the camps is the internationally acknowledged neutrality of Ukraine, like Austria and Switzerland are. That is a fair compromise. Ukraine need not be caught in the crosshairs of so-called big power rivalry. But it is time for India to play the role of a peace broker that it has been contemplating to do. This is the time, and to be a part of the solution of this present impasse in Ukraine. If India fails to do so or does not succeed in its peace brokering initiative, India should choose its corner, as I said, condemn Russia's continued aggression and join others in calling upon Russia to back off from Ukraine. Because the Ukrainian model can be repeated by any country anywhere. Westerners will threaten sanctions and India would be deterring. India's balancing role has reached a biting point. It can neither go forward nor can it come backward. So, this balancing role should lead to productive, credible outcome, or India should give up this balancing role. Finally, I would like to say that because of this role of neutrality, which diplomats couch it in the phrase called strategic autonomy, that is again an untenable position. All countries are one way or other interdependent. No country can remain autonomous or isolated. So, India should have long ago entered into a security alliance to defend its territorial integrity and spend its scarce resources in building its economy, like Japan and Germany did. India to remain neutral and build its defense on its own has cost us billions of dollars, and that was a short-sighted, self-defeating strategy. We need friends and partners. Let us choose them, and it is now. Thank you.